The story I'm telling you tonight is written by me. However, it's sort of inspired by other stories I've heard and life lessons, so it's sort of all that combined into one. I forget what it's called. It's in the program. I'm needing a chance, thank you. If you were to ask him today why he walked into that cafe that specific day, John will tell you he does not know. He had walked past it several times, but never had an inclination to go in. Something was different about that day, though. It was the start of spring, the sun was shining, the birds were chirping. Maybe it was the sense of rejuvenation and newness that inspired him to walk in. He walked into the cafe, he sat down, he looked around. He liked this place. He wondered why he had never come in before. He started to listen to the music and he would nod his head. His reverie was disrupted by a lady saying, "Hello, welcome to the Sunshine Cafe. What can I get for you?" He looked up at her and he was floored. She was beautiful. No, not beautiful. To him, there was no word in the English language that could fully encapsulate what she looked like. Her hair was her hair stood up tall on her head, tall and regal. Her arms and her legs were long and slender. Her skin, her dark skin, seemed to shimmer in the light. She said again, "What can I get for you?" He said, a tea, please. Milk and sugar? Yes, please, milk and sugar. I'll be right back with your tea. He watched her walk away, and he admired the graceful way in which she moved. He told himself to snap out of it. "You're not a teenager, you're a man." She came back with his tea, and she asked him if he wanted anything else, and he said, "No, thank you." He was proud that he was able to compose himself to speak to her. She sashayed back to the counter, she started to clean up, and she eventually took off her apron. He was disappointed because he realized that she was leaving. He would not have a chance to get to learn her name. He resolved that he would come back the next day. He came back the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that, but she was not there. So eventually, he asked one of the other people, "Excuse me, what happened to the lady, the one with the tall hair?" She responded, "Oh, Fatima. Yes, she went home for a family emergency." "Oh, I hope everything's all right." "Yes, yeah, everything is okay. Do you know when she'll be back?" "Oh, I'm not sure. It's been a while since she's been to Nigeria." Nigeria, he thought. Why would she be in England? Though that was a little bit of a silly question for him to ask. He had worked with several Nigerians. Nigerians were no foreigners to England. He had worked with several Nigerians, but he had never considered dating one, which was kind of weird because he was surrounded by them. He had only ever dated proper English girls. He came back a couple weeks later, and to his delight, she was there. After she brought him his tea, he said to her, "Oh, I hope everything's okay with the family emergency." And she said, "How do you know about that?" He said, "Well, I had been asking about you." "Well, why were you asking about me?" "Well, I don't know. I find myself attracted to you." He was so flustered. He had never acted this way before. This went against everything his proper English upbringing had taught him. She laughed and she said, "Oh, I'm just joking. Everything's fine. Thank you so much for asking. I appreciate it. My father had a heart attack, but he's doing much better now." He was relieved. He was afraid that she would never talk to him again. However, they continued their conversation. She was very bright and had an inquisitive mind. He came back to the cafe day after day, just so he could strike up a conversation with her. Eventually, he mustered up the courage to ask her on a date. He said, "Fatima, I want to take you out on a proper date so we can have a proper conversation." She said, "All right, I'll get back to you in a week." A week? No one had ever told time, she said, "I agree." They went out to dinner, and it was a wonderful evening. They dated for 2 years and decided to get married. At that point, they both knew that they had to tell their parents and get permission. They started out with John's parents. "What? Excuse me? You want to marry who? A Nigerian? You know she's only marrying you because she wants citizenship, right? You're not just marrying her, you're marrying her mother, her father, her brother, her cousins, their entire village. What will the neighbors say?" John was very disappointed. He was very upset. "I can't believe you still hold these archaic views of Africans. I am so disappointed with you. Whether you like it or not, this wedding is going to happen." He was very distraught though, and he called up his sisters. They all said the same thing. "Don't worry, John. Just give them some time. They'll come around." His parents eventually did come around. However, they decided they didn't have to be happy about it. John and Fatima then flew to Nigeria to speak with Fatima's parents. Their reaction was exactly what Fatima expected. "What? You want to marry who? A white man? You couldn't have found a nice Nigerian man to marry? This isn't going to happen. What will the neighbors say?" Fatima was less aggressive about her approach than John was. She knew she wouldn't or couldn't get married without her parents' permission. Her parents called a family gathering, and all the family gathered around. They discussed and they chatted about it. Finally, her great uncle interceded on her part. He said, "Listen, how can you send your daughter off to a foreign land and not expect her to fall in love with one of your men? You should be grateful that she came here and gave you an honor by asking you. She could have just married him and never told you. It shows you that she still believes in her traditions and in her family life. You should give them your blessing because they will need your help as their married life continues." So her parents conceded. 2 months later, John and Fatima were married in Nigeria. It was a mix of British and Nigerian culture, which was very delightful, but a little weird to see. If you were to ask John to this day why he walked into the cafe that day, he will tell you he does not know. But boy, is he glad he did.